Hello and welcome to CDA TV. You can see where we are with a fantastic background. I'm here at Cambridgeshire Constabulary. I'm Matthew Wheeler and I'll be the host today. And we've got two special guests, so would you like to introduce yourselves?
Hello everyone, I'm Caitlin. I am a staff member for the police and my role is all about building the public's trust and confidence in the police. I'm the inclusion and legitimacy coordinator for the force.
Hello, my name is Inspector Colin Norden. I'm the Huntingdonshire Neighbourhood Inspector. I'm here to answer any questions you may have tonight.
Brilliant, so I'm really looking forward to it. I know we'll have a lot of the community there. I'm sure they're very, very interested to ask questions, and I know some of them might have come along to the police roadshow. So if you are watching at home, if you're thinking to yourself that there's questions you want to ask, this is your opportunity. Even if you think might be a stupid question to ask the police, this is the perfect opportunity to make sure that you ask, and pop it in the comments and we'll ask them today. So my first question for you is, we've worked together for a while now with Cambridgeshire Deaf Association and the police, and we set up the Police Roadshow, which I believe is the first attendance at HQ for the deaf community to give feedback. Is that right?
Yes, it was definitely, while we've come out and talked to some of your smaller sessions, done Coffee with the Cops, it was the first big chance for the deaf community to come along, give us their thoughts and feedback and host a much wider scale event county-wide for the community.
And how was it for you both? I'll ask you one at a time, but how did you find, meeting with the deaf community, and what was their feedback like? What did you notice and how did you feel?
So I do quite a few of these meetings with different communities, and I was expecting the deaf community to really come in, have speak to us, engage with us, and actually say things are quite good. We don't have real criminality in the community, so we expected to be quite pro. I was really surprised and disappointed actually about some of the feedback we had with difficulty accessing our system, such as a 999 system, and I think quite a few members or people that attended felt quite let down by the police and almost second class. So we were really surprised by that, and we've had to go away and do a lot of work.
And I'm sure, that's why CDA and we do our work and we sort of campaign for access, and that's why we're really pleased to be working with you to improve things for the future for the deaf community. Also, it's really, really good because it's great to see the police are enthusiastic to work with us. We have a second roadshow on the 25th of March, which is on a Wednesday. So it'll be here at Cambridgeshire Constabulary headquarters. It starts at 6 o'clock, so please arrive at 5:30 if you're interested in coming. And so I wanted to ask you about the roadshow as well. What did you feel the most common feedback was from the deaf community?
Probably the most common feedback was around the lack of access through the 999 system. There is a general presumption that 999 is a world-class service in many ways. It works for everybody. If you need the police in an emergency, you just dial it. And clearly what we misunderstood was how that really did not work for the deaf community, and there was a lot of personal stories, quite hard stories to hear, where it hadn't worked in the past all across the UK for people.
So what type of work will the police be doing to try and make sure that the deaf community do have that opportunity in an urgent circumstance where they can contact 999?
So obviously there's lots of work already, and we've invested more and talked more with some of our app providers, such as BSL 999 and Relay UK. We understand that some members of the community have preferences over which one they prefer to use and how well they interface with our systems. So we've done a lot of work to better understand that and to have them better connected into our systems. And also fed back to them some of the feedback that was given, unfortunately, sits outside of our control here in Cambridgeshire. It was very much for BSL 999 or Relay UK to take on board, and a big push we would ask the communities, if you do have difficulties with it, not in an emergency, but if you find difficulties, do feedback to us or feedback to them themselves, because that's the only way we can learn to improve. But then we've also been looking at other opportunities, so things that are not necessarily specifically for the deaf community, but things that we can help the community to understand, such as sort of rapid SOS and also silent 999 calls, which I'll let Colin explain a bit more about.
Yeah, could you explain a little bit about what silent 999 is? Because I actually don't know myself. So I think this is the first time I've heard that word.
So silent 999 on 999 calls we receive, have done for years, where we can't hear anyone on the line, or we can hear a disturbance maybe. So we will risk assess those calls to decide if we're going to dispatch. So sometimes we can trace the call. And sometimes if you press 55, for example, on the handset, we know you're there. It's not you haven't pocket dialed, and we know you need help. And so as simple as that, pressing 55 can help. So there's many different sort of technology ways we can trace them calls and track those calls. The other thing is very much developing. Apple have just moved into sort of an emergency system now that we can have access just for a very short time of maybe where your location, if you set it up on your phone. So if you've got an iPhone, if you Google it, it will tell you the instructions how to set it up. In that, because I did it the other day, you can put your details in, you can put numerous other people's contact details in, but you can also put in really important information like you are deaf, or you cannot talk on the phone. So we know now you need help, but you're struggling to communicate. So that's a new development, and I'd encourage anyone to Google it. And I think it's definitely live with Apple.
And we have technology that's coming across summer to help it work with Android systems as well. So that's developing. So that's separate to Silent 999, but that's something we would really encourage any member of the community to turn on, put as much information in about, because it's going to aid us in trying to get to you if needed.
So silent 999 is an app?
No, silent 999 is just what we class a 999 call where we can't hear anything or no one's speaking. So it could be sometimes a child ring 999, and we have to. Is it just a child messing about, or is it an adult or a child that needs help but can't talk for numerous reasons? It could be a domestic violence victim that wants help but can't risk speaking. So that's just a 999 call where there's no speech.
So while we appreciate that's maybe not the best, obviously using BSL 999 or Relay UK will allow the operator to communicate with a deaf or hard of hearing person. In a real emergency, if you can't get any of those apps to work, obviously there were some of the things we were asked about at the roadshow. If the person can just dial 999 using their mobile or the landline, and even if they can make some noise or they can keep pressing the buttons, we're at least aware that there's somebody there. So obviously we appreciate the person may not be able to hear at the other end. It might not be the best system, but it's just another fallback system. It's just about giving you as many options as possible to get in touch with us in that emergency.
So they have to put in their details, is that right, before they can use it?
Not for silent 999 calls. So we have two things here. Silent 999 calls, anybody can do that. You just dial 999, and if you can't make noise or you can't hear us, then you can't just keep pressing buttons so we know you're there. But if you can make any noise, we risk assess it. Then the second thing we talked about was the Rapid SOS, the new emergency contact system through your mobile phone, which is definitely live for Apple, and we'll move on with Android. And it's basically your emergency contact sheet. It's in sort of your health app, I think it is, on the Apple settings. You put details about you, and as you dial, if you do dial 999, and I believe it works through BSL 99, it's giving us information. It sends more of that information to the control room, which is where your 999 calls come through to. They can access that information. And there's technology advancing all the time, such as if you don't have signal, it can use your satellite data. And this is beyond my technical knowledge, but it uses spaceship technology in Caitlin's opinion, but it uses technology to aid finding you.
Wow, yeah, that seems like very good developments, and it's really useful for the deaf community to know things like that. And I know from my own experience, you know, that there's always technology developing, and sometimes you do think, well, you should just be able to put, you know, I'm deaf, not just for the police, but for lots of other services. And so it feels like sometimes there's not the sort of acknowledgement that it's actually quite simple to be able to put that you're deaf. So it's really good that we've got those new advances with technology and working with Apple and Android. So also at the roadshow, obviously we were working together to create new cards, which is I Am Deaf cards. So would you like to explain a little bit more about that?
Yes, certainly. So these are the new I Am Deaf cards, which you see. So they've been developed here in Cambridgeshire with CDA, and basically on the front it just says I am deaf. It's a tool really designed for you to have. We take no information about you, so if you have the card, we won't know who it's registered. It's not registered in any way. We don't know any personal details, but you can show it to an officer if needed, and it just helps you obviously that first initial communication about it to explain that you are deaf and that there's support that's needed. On the back there is a QR code which is for signed video, so unlike the BSL 999 and Relay UK, obviously the officers have access to signed video to aid in any communication when they're there with them. Obviously we still are pushing that out to officers to make sure that they're aware that they can access signed video, but that's there as a QR code for either yourselves to use. It takes you to the link where you can download signed video, or obviously if the officer didn't have it, they could obviously utilise it too. We'd hope the officer does, but that's still work in progress.
Brilliant. So I wonder if you know of any deaf people that have used it yet?
I know lots of people were trying it out at the roadshow and were trying to see if the QR code worked and things. I don't know if anybody's actually utilised the QR code. Hopefully people don't need to contact us that much, because it's not normally good when you need to contact the police. But it's obviously there, and hopefully we can start to track how often it's used and things. And hopefully at this upcoming roadshow we can hear if any community members have had to use it and things.
Yes, so I was wondering, maybe some of you watching, maybe you've come along to the roadshow the last time. So if you have used it and you're interested in coming on the 25th at 6 o'clock, please do come and feedback, and you can see that the police are really engaged and they're proactively trying to develop and improve accessibility for the deaf community. So we want the deaf community to feel comfortable with the police, because we know that there's community who have experienced barriers, and we think that's really important to build up that barriers, to build up the trust, sorry. That's really important. So another thing was a little bit surprising at the last roadshow, the Pegasus scheme. I noticed when I was there, the deaf community, they were really interested and they were asking lots of questions about what Pegasus is. I know we went through the PowerPoint, and you know they were really keen to be involved and engaged. So those of you who didn't come, maybe watching it online at home, would you be able to explain a little bit more about it?
Yeah, so the Pegasus scheme I think is really good. It's for anyone really who wishes to register with Cambridgeshire Police, and you can register really anything. If you've got any form of communication issue, so it doesn't have to be deaf, you can register. So your phone number can be linked to it, your address can be linked to it. So if you phone on your mobile phone to us, straight away we can see the information you have given us. So your name, where you live, but importantly, if you can't talk or you can't see or you've got any form of communication issue, it gives us a head start. So if you to phone 999 on your mobile phone and you've registered for Pegasus, straight away we know you may be deaf. So that gives a call taker a head start. Straight away they know they're going to need to dispatch to you, and it's not an accidental call. So it's a really good scheme, but it's open to everyone. Unfortunately, like most things in the police, it's not national. It really should be. There are some other forces do it. Some forces have a Pegasus scheme which has nothing to do with it. It's about aviation and plane spotting. So it's a real shame, but we've got Pegasus in Cambridgeshire, and it is slowly rolling out to other forces. It's really, really good, and you can give as much information as you want.
And if you do register for it, what you get sent is a card like such as this. So you get a full credit card, and you also get a fob that you can put on your keyring, and you get a code. So every person who registers for Pegasus gets the unique 5-digit code. So if you did need us in an emergency, if you can communicate either through BSL 999, or even if you ring 999, say police, get through, just say Pegasus and your 5-digit code, that will give us access to all that information. Or obviously, if you meet a police officer, if you hand them the card, they can contact the control room and find out all that information about you. But you can put all sorts of things down there. So you can say, such as, it would be best for you to contact my parents, it would be best for you to contact, this is my carer's number. There's a lot of information it can register, so it's up for anybody, as long as you have a communication difficulty. And that doesn't have to be a difficulty that you have all the time. So if, for example, you in an emergency, it would be harder for you to communicate, but generally day to day you can get by with lip reading and things, but in an emergency that wouldn't work. You can still register for Pegasus. It's for any communication difficulty, even if that would only be in an emergency. And we will
Oh, brilliant. Go on.
we will have more information about in leaflets and things at the roadshow for people.
Brilliant. So you've seen that direct from the police. They've been really working hard, thinking hard, and developing lots of different options to try and improve the communication. So I'm sure you all have questions. You've probably been watching and you're interested. So please keep them coming in. We've got 2 questions already, so I'll ask them now. So the first question we've got in is from Remy, who asks about the I Am Deaf cards. She said that's a great idea, but she's a bit concerned that they could become easily lost. So have you got a digital version of it that they could be kept on their phone, or is that something you're looking at creating?
That's a really great idea. We hadn't thought about a digital version. Obviously, we started with the card, we produced a card, but that's a great idea. There's no personal information in it, so you can take a photo of it and things and store it. That's not a problem, but obviously we can also send out via CGA the actual just version of it for you to store on your phones. There's nothing personal or private in it, so store anywhere that you like.
Brilliant. Did you want to add anything?
I was going to say the same. I'll just take a photograph of it, and then you know who hasn't got their phone with them at all times, so it's really handy.
Brilliant. So I hope that answered your question, Remy. So you can take a picture and keep it. Obviously, it's not got any of your personal information in it. So we have another question from Lana, and it's again related to what you were saying earlier. About the feedback from the deaf community being very negative and obviously not being happy with the police. She feels that the police are not always helpful. She had an incident from her experience that the police weren't able to help, and she felt they got distracted from other things and she got a bit sort of pushed aside. So she wanted to know, if she is deaf and they wanted to make a complaint to the police, how can they do that? How can they access the complaint system?
Okay, so if they can go on the website, you can make a complaint on our website, Cambridgeshire Police website. You can just input a complaint like that. If you didn't want to go on the web, you could use one of the apps mentioned and submit a complaint that way. You could also actually post a letter even. Not many people do these days, but you can do that as well. So the other option would be to attend either Parkside Police Station in Cambridge or Thorpewood Police Station. And you can do it in person.
So I know, filling in the forms, obviously it's relying a lot on the English or communicating face to face. So a lot of deaf people might struggle to write a complaint in English. So again, that's sort of another barrier. So even, face to face, how would somebody be able to communicate that way? Or if they don't have a high level of English, so how could they sort of express that complaint fully without being worried about those barriers? Can they submit a BSL video to the police, or?
So probably what would be the easiest for us is if you can even register that you would like to make a complaint, it can, and say that you're relied on BSL, it will go to our complaints resolution team, who can then contact you and utilise the signed video app to communicate with you. Or if you were to obviously submit a BSL video, we would then seek for that to be interpreted for you, so we could understand what it was that you were saying to us. But probably it would be that human interaction with a BSL interpreter, or the use of signed video from our complaints resolution team. Or if you go into a police station, a lot of the inquiry desks will have, just as you saw the other day when you came to headquarters, Matthew, the new signed video QR code, so that they could at least get initial details, and then we can follow up with follow-up appointments.
Yes, and I'll let the audience know about that as well. So I recently went to HQ. I went into the reception, looked very normal, and again, this is very recent, and I spotted that there was a QR code on the desk that links you to signed video. So is that, obviously this is in Cambridgeshire, so is that all forces have that, or is it all stations?
So in Cambridgeshire, headquarters has it, and our inquiry officers at Parkside in Cambridge and Peterborough in Thorpewood should have it. I will double check that tomorrow. I will email them, but they should have it. They're our open stations. As to all of the forces, as Colin said earlier, unfortunately we're not national. All forces could do all different things. I wouldn't like to say either way for another force, but if you live in another force and you're watching this, ask your local force or suggest to them that they should have it.
I think one of the things I'd like to say, and one of the things we're taking from the feedback we received from the first evening, was if we need to pay to get an interpreter in to get that complaint, we will. Because we would get an interpreter in if we needed to, if you couldn't speak English. So because there's a communication area with being deaf, I think probably officers on the police haven't thought of that the same before. There isn't nothing we can't overcome, and if we need to pay to get an interpreter, and we will, to receive that complaint fully and to get the details right. If we can use an app, why wouldn't we? Because it's probably going to be quicker. But if need be, it goes back to what we said about. I think some of the members of the deaf community felt second class because we weren't providing. Well, we're duty bound to provide, so we will. So that's the message we want to get out. So if you need to make a complaint and the apps aren't working, the websites aren't working, if you can find a way to let us know, we will book an interpreter and take the complaint that way.
And maybe that's also with the support of CDA or your family or friends or something, that we can then come to you if we understand.
So I was just thinking, linked to that, like some officers maybe not thinking about what the language barrier is and how to follow up that process. So how do you provide sort of deaf awareness training to ensure that officers make sure that they all have that common knowledge? You know, do you have specific training for that, or if someone joins the force, do they get involved and know how?
So we have lots and lots of training for officers, and we're trying to make them better aware of the barriers around deaf and hard of hearing. That's something that it's still a work in progress. We can't say that every officer will know what to do exactly, but they will try to overcome it. We have got things in the pipelines on the back of the last road show where we're going out and reminding officers about Pegasus. We send lots of communications out to them, but they do get lots of emails, so we're trying to go in person and tell them about things. Student officers learn about different barriers in their training, but they learn a lot of information. It's about reinforcing that learning throughout their careers. And across Beds, Cambs and Hearts, because we're a triforce for certain things, we are looking at pulling together an initial works and a draft programme of a deaf awareness module of online learning has been produced. So that's something that we're trialling and seeing, and we'll remind officers about, that they can use the trial version just to improve their awareness of it.
Brilliant, really interesting, thank you. So we've got another question from Remy again. Thank you very much. It means we're keeping our attention for the long periods of time. It's great. So again, it's linked to complaint systems. So from your website, does it have an option that they can upload a BSL video, for example? Like, can you click on make a complaint and click, send an email and upload a file that they could upload a video, or is that not?
I'm not sure we can. I could be wrong on that. However, we do have a system that if you are speaking to us on our either on our chat function or on the phone, we can send you a link which you can then upload a video. It's called Good Sam. So it may well be on the website. I just don't know, if I'm honest. But we can definitely send you a link, and you can send us that video. We use it daily to get like CCTV clips or take over people's mobile phones if they're filming an incident. So you can definitely send us video clips. I'm just not sure if you can do it on the web.
But that's something we can take away based on tonight to investigate, and we'll aim to try and provide an update of that at the roadshow.
I will say our website is part of a national website, so we don't have full control over it because it's a national model for 43 forces. So we can't easily always make changes, but you can definitely submit videos to us.
Okay, brilliant. So Lana wanted to follow up as well on what she asked before. Her issue is also about having appointments or interviews cancelled because they can't get interpreters. And that was something that we brought up at the roadshow, I think, at the last time, because we really understand that the police actively trying to book interpreters, but sometimes they're let down by the agencies. So how, or what's the plan, I guess, to sort of resolve this as an issue? Because I know sometimes people feel like they've let down, once or twice, and it's something really serious that could happen in that meantime of the delay. And so they're here trying to use a service, but obviously trying to access that without interpreters. What happens?
So interestingly, when we did the roadshow, we had Caitlin organised an interpreter, and I forget how many people you actually had to call.
I think it was about 65 people the night before, because we'd been let down by our previous provision.
And sadly, part of that is because, if I'm honest, I think we went with the cheapest provider, and they're not providing the service. So we've definitely fed back to the senior management to say, I think we almost need an exemption, because we can get a Russian interpreter, Lithuanian interpreter, Polish interpreter, whatever, very easily. We really struggle to get signed interpreters. So we pushed back to say, effectively, can we go to a different list that's slightly more expensive and that don't let us down? So there's work in progress for that.
And we have started to see some policies put in place. So, for example, where there is a policy in place where the on-duty inspector can authorise an exemption for an interpreter to be brought in if that's an emergency, so if you need it there and then. But obviously we're having to look wider at that provision for sort of scheduled appointments and interviews, because we need to be sustainable. We need to deliver that service to you as well. So that is nothing in policing moves very quickly, but we're very committed to trying to find a solution.
Brilliant. So Lana, hopefully that has answered and it's helped. They're in the process of investigating how to improve things in the future, so hopefully for all of the deaf community that will be a benefit.
Can I just add, Lana, I think it's Lana, if you want us to give Lana my email address afterwards, or facilitate communication, I'll get an officer to make contact and deal with this complaint, what she wants to raise.
And obviously if people come along to the roadshow, we can deal with things there. We can give follow-up, we can give information for them to contact us after, more on one-to-one for information and things.
Brilliant. What a fantastic offer. So that'll be really, really useful, and we'll share contact details. Also here at CDA, we have our advocacy and support service. We have caseworkers and advocates that are more than happy to help. If you're feeling like you're experiencing these barriers with the police, or you're not sure, or maybe you're nervous of how to try things yourself, that's why we're here. And the caseworkers and advocates are always here for the community to support and engage with the police as well. So Terry Ann has a question. she feels when she arrived at the HQ, it wasn't very accessible because outside the door it says, "Please use the phone" on the wall.
Yeah, good point, well made. Yeah, we'll take that on board. I mean, unfortunately, that is what's standard across all our police stations now. I'll take that back because I don't know what the answer for that is. If I'm sure we could get a system better for that. So if you can't communicate via the phone, I'll see if I can get that. At least get her a better answer for the follow-up meeting.
But what we can say is definitely for the roadshow, when you arrive on site, we will have officers and police cadets, some of our younger people, in the car park on site who will guide you. Our cadets have had a session, they've been learning a bit of BSL to be able to say hello to you and things. So they will guide, there'll be no difficulty, you won't need to use a phone or anything like that for coming to the roadshow. We have things in place for that.
That's brilliant. So hopefully you've got some more questions, keep them coming, but I'm going to hold them for now because I want to talk about a little bit of a different topic. So I want to talk about the plods. Can you explain what that means, what's involved in the role?
So plods are police link officers for the deaf. They are officers or staff members who volunteer their time to assist us with communication with the deaf and hard of hearing community. So they aren't interpreters, they don't have any formal interpreting qualification, but they do learn BSL. So we currently have 4 in force, all 4 BSL level 2 and 3 of them are currently learning their BSL level 3. And their aim is to come out and so if you were to be brought into custody, they couldn't do all the official interpreting, but they could come and just say hello to you, offer you a cup of tea, explain that we're trying to get an interpreter for you. Obviously, they're not available 24/7 at the moment. We only have a small number of them, but also they'll come along to things such as they'll be at the roadshow and they're going to help people after the roadshow sign up to Pegasus, the Pegasus scheme if they want, and they can also be used. Sometimes we have to use them when we unfortunately don't have interpreters, try and at least get some information. They're there to really aid us and also learn more about the community, help educate us as a force about the community, and obviously particularly our 3 who are learning their level 3s, are going out and making lots of contacts with lots of community groups and things. So they're just there to be that link, that community bridge for us.
It's so fantastic. I don't think I've ever seen a deaf officer or an officer signing in my life. So the fact we've got 4 and hopefully that just continues to grow. So it's really, really positive. And it's great to know that people can, if for example, they're arrested and in custody, it's great to know that a plod could come, and I know that they're not there to interpret, but even to see somebody signing is a huge reassurance. And, just have that little bit of communication is so useful. So it's really good to hear. So one thing that I've been talking to Caitlin about is to make sure that I wanted to raise today was the Victim and Witness Hub. So that's something new for me. And again, I'm going to ask a little bit more about it, about why you wanted to bring it up today on the live stream.
So the Victim and Witness Hub is a commission service. So it's not a part of the police, but it sits within us. It's funded by the OPCC's office. So it's independent support for people who are victims or witnesses of a crime. Now, if you are a victim or a witness, an officer will likely refer you to that service. They go through sort of a victim questionnaire, and if you want support, they can refer you to that service. So you may be reached out through that way. But you can also self-refer to the Victim and Witness Hub if you have been a victim or witness of a crime. You don't have to have made a report about the crime. So even if you don't want the crime to be investigated, you can still reach out to them for support. Obviously, if you don't make a crime report, they will guide you through that if you do want to. But if you're only seeking support, we won't then be investigating it without the crime report as well. But it's a support. They can either help you through the process or they can refer you to other services. And they also support people particularly if you're a victim of crime, you're having to go to court and you're going to give evidence or anything, they'll organise visits for you to the court beforehand, so you can see where you'll have to go and give evidence, different things. So it's very much about that care, because we understand it's witnessing or being particularly being a victim of crime, it can be very, very emotive. It can have a very big impact on somebody's life. So it's a whole range of support they can offer. They also can access the Pegasus system. So if you've registered for Pegasus, you get through to them. They can check if you're a member of Pegasus. They have been having training in sign video, so whilst it may not be obviously where they can then utilise sign video to get in touch with you. So it's just that support service there for if you have been a victim or witness of a crime.
Brilliant, really interesting. Thank you so much. So again, if you've got any more questions, this is your opportunity. We've got Caitlin and we've got Colin, Inspector Colin Norden. So just to let you all know, you're probably naturally watching and thinking the police are there. Maybe there's something you want to ask that you've always wanted to ask, or even, how many deaf people have you arrested? Anything you want, send in the questions. There's no stupid questions. So I wanted to ask about the Bobby scheme. Is that a part of the Victim and Witness Hub, or is it different?
It's different. It's slightly, I suppose, a slight overlap, but it's different. It's a totally separate scheme, and it's there. It predominantly supports victims of crime or people who are at risk of being a victim of a crime. But anybody can contact them if you have a vulnerability, and they offer much more practical help. So they will come out and advise you, or they can help you with fitting things such as key safes, ring doorbells and things. For some people, the provision is provided free, particularly if you've been a victim of a crime and we want to ensure you're safe to try and prevent it. Or sometimes they ask for a contribution towards it, but it's a trusted source of practical support, such as ring doorbells, key safes. They tend to be the main things, but they can look at sort of locked window things. There's a whole range of things they can provide, from alarms and different things. And we're hoping some people from the Bobby scheme will be there at the roadshow, but we'll definitely have leaflets and things from them around that. But yeah, it's practical support, but it's obviously a trusted source. We have their volunteers, they're vetted. Nobody's going to charge you an extortionate amount or anything for making sure you're home safe.
Brilliant, thanks. So I have a question. If a deaf person, maybe they sort of are in the hearing world, so that means they might have hearing family or hearing friends and not really part of the sort of deaf community, but they might be experiencing harassment or domestic violence, and for them it can be really, really hard to escape that, and it can be really overwhelming. So how could you encourage that person to take those next steps, or what is the first step to sort of make contact with the police, or maybe a different service that you've mentioned today?
I'd encourage them to make contact with the police, either them directly or friend or family. The main thing is just get a contact and say, your experience these issues, and then and again say what the communication difficulty is, or have a friend, an advocate who can come with you. Just the early contact, and then we can work the problem. There's nothing we can't work out. So yeah, the earlier the better, because it rarely goes away. You can do it if you want to submit anonymously about crimes. You've got Crime Stoppers. So if you're concerned about a friend or family member, you can submit like that. You can ring up the police, or contact the police in any way about your a friend or relative. If maybe a new partner, a new relationship, and you think they could have previous domestic violence, you can ask them to check us out. There's several schemes. So really the main thing is just get early contact with us via any platform, and via anyone you trust. And we have many mechanisms to help, and we can do covert contacts, so we can contact them maybe when we won't necessarily have to go to their house if the perpetrator is living with them. We can contact them when they go to work, in the workplace, the school run, when they go to the dentist, even if we have a bit of information. There's many ways we can get around it, but the main thing is just get in contact with us.
Brilliant. So I've noticed that you have lots of different things. So there's Crime Stoppers, there's the Pegasus scheme, there's the Deaf Card, there's the Bobby scheme. There's so many sort of different options, and I think sometimes that can be quite overwhelming. So how can we, maybe work together, but just to make it a simple, clear approach for access? This is what this service offers, this is what this service offers. Obviously for the deaf community, how might you do that?
Probably that's working with you to understand what would be the best way to make it clear. What we would probably really say, if you use BSL as your main communication tool, if you need us in an emergency, use BSL 999 if you can. If you need us for anything else, use sign video, because that gets us through to our 101 system, where we can deal with any manner of things from that, and that's non-emergency things, so we can refer you information around all those other schemes and things. And Redchester for Pegasus they would be our main thing, sort of. Redchester for Pegasus, use BSL 999 and sign video, and we'll give you all the information. But maybe if you want one sort of leaflet or one video or something, we'll work with you as sort of CDA or anybody who can give us suggestions of how we make it simplified.
Yeah, and I was just thinking, actually, maybe we could clip out some of these videos that explain, different aspects of it to make it really, really clear, because I think accessibility is so important.
Yeah, and I think that's also where we want to learn. Whilst, as we said, our website is national anyways, we have some pages we can control. So if there's videos you think would be good that we can say, come to this page and you can hear all about the different schemes and things, we can either clip these videos out or work with you to make one landing home for the deaf and hard of hearing community. We can work with our comms team on that.
Brilliant, let's do it. So Wednesday the 25th of March, it'll be here again at the headquarters, and it'll be our second roadshow. So I wanted to ask you, for anybody watching at home, what can they expect on the night compared to the last roadshow? What's going to be involved, and are there any updates that they should be looking forward to?
So we'll give some updates on some of the questions you asked. Obviously there was a few more questions than from tonight. We've tried to cover quite a lot of them tonight, but we've got a few extra things to give you on the night, so hopefully you'll want to come along. But one of the big things that we're going to do at this roadshow is we're going to show you some body worn video. So all officers wear cameras on them when they go out, and they record interactions. And we've been looking for interactions with the deaf community. So we've gathered 1/2 so far. We're still looking for a couple of others, but we want to show you some of that interaction. We won't show it all, but we'll show you some key parts of that. And we want your feedback. These are real examples of where officers have encountered somebody and have tried to navigate the situation. We want that sort of, you have that lived experience of how could we have done it better, what did we do well as well. Hopefully we always like to give our officers praise where it comes sort of, and that's probably the big thing that'll be different to the last time. And then we'll have some more updates around the different schemes and things. And also really this time we want to build in that time, if people do want support in registering for Pegasus and things, that it's there at the end, and there'll be more people on site who hopefully can sign, and then it's just your chance to come along, ask any questions. We'll make sure to build in that time, whether it's at what point do we give speeding tickets, or or what is it about the Pegasus scheme that makes it different. We'll answer if we can.
And I think, just building on your point, that watching our interactions with the deaf community, we sort of mark our own homework. And if we're sitting here, much like we thought the 999 system was good for everyone and the deaf community had no issues with this, we're marking our own homework and saying these interactions seem all right to us. They could be horrendous, we don't know, because we're not deaf. So I think it's really important that we get that input, because if not, we continue to think, yeah, no issues here.
So you've seen it here. They want your feedback. So that will be at the next roadshow. Come along. They're going to bring some body-worn footage of where police has interacted with a member of the deaf community. And they want you to come and feedback about how they could improve for all of the deaf community. So there you go. Brilliant. So a couple of questions. Gosh, we've got 5. sort of linked to the body cam footage. So one person has said, how do we communicate with the police if they're handcuffed behind their back? You know, because obviously they use sign language, so...
Okay. So, I mean, obviously it's difficult without talking about an exact example, but I've been in the police 20 years. I've never had to arrest anyone who's deaf yet. I would suggest if you're getting handcuffed, you're being violent. So we calm the violence down, then we'll communicate. I think it's unlikely you're going to be handcuffed. You know, the most important thing a police officer does is talk to people. The best weapon we carry. So, or communicate, I should say. So I like to think if we realise early on you're deaf, unless you're fighting us, we're not going to handcuff you. And we need, so I think it's unlikely to come in that situation. But if you are handcuffed and you can't communicate, well then we've got to communicate. So we're going to have to work the problem. So I like to think that example won't happen, unless you're fighting us. In which case, well, don't fight the police. But yeah, so I think most police officers will try and work the problem. Interestingly, someone at the evening said to me, they can be quite intimidated by the police, and actually I think the police sometimes will be quite intimidated by someone who's deaf because they won't want to cause offence and they won't want to upset them, and they'll be worried about their interactions and their dealing with the deaf community, because most cops are nice people and they want to help. So without a specific example, it's hard for me to say shouldn't have been handcuffed, should be handcuffed. Maybe, I don't know what the footage is on the evening, there might be an example of that, but and we can talk about that, but we would have to work the problem. As police officers, we deal with all manner of people. We have people in mental health crisis, sometimes they get handcuffed, and we just calm the situation down and then get the communication going. So I'd expect police officers to use those sort of skills.
Yeah, I understand, and obviously you'd have to risk assess that situation. Obviously, I know some people in the deaf community have concerns that if they are coming face to face with a deaf person, and they're wanting to, the deaf community's coming face to face with an officer and they're wanting to express themselves. I know sometimes that some officers might feel that they're being violent just because of their use of sign language and they're wanting to express themselves, their facial expressions, you know. But actually, that's just part of who I am, and I think sometimes issues arise from that. So I think that's something the deaf community are concerned about. But is that something you're aware of?
Yeah, we are aware, and that is what we're trying to build into the training. That just is how people present with, in some ways, it's not how they come across. And again, mental health comes across like that sometimes. People in crisis often come across as non-engaging or violent, and they're not. They're in crisis. Sometimes people that have medical conditions come across as drink drivers and things like that. So it's about training and equipping the officers, and very much we're trying to put that into the training you're talking about developing. I don't think we're always going to get it right, but I think we're going in the right direction with that, with understanding people.
And hopefully that's also where having things like the I am deaf card, if you can show that to the officer and then you're also signing on top of that, is going to give them more and more context to why you're signing.
Amazing. So we've got a question from Jake. So he's out of the area, so he's not a local person, but he wants to sort of think about how he can set up a local group in his locality to meet his local police force to try and do the same sort of thing. You know, like the work we're doing here at CDA, he wants to sort of replicate that with his area. So how could he do that?
So everyone now in England and Wales should be able to contact their local policing team, so their neighbourhood team, and get a reply within 72 hours. Now, except the communication might be a little bit more difficult, but that is what. So it should be via the web, via the phone, or the inquiry office, and that should be England, Wales wide. But if he can get a message to them, they should be able to assist him with that. It's normally the neighbourhood policing team. Some of the bigger forces might have specialist teams that will deal with those sort of events. But the main thing is just make contact, explain you've seen this in Cambridgeshire, maybe send a link to this video and say you'd like to do something similar in his force area. And I would expect that force to oblige. We have a positive duty in the police to engage with our community. And if you look at what the governments are saying, successive governments, they want the police back in the community and to engage.
Brilliant. Thank you. So the next question I really like. You don't see many police walking out and about as much anymore, you know, the old bobby helmets. You see that less and less now. So why is that?
Political answer. No. My chief constable and the government want bobbies on the beat. It's clear they do. Unfortunately, like a lot of public services, resources are quite stretched, and we are struggling to put bobbies back on the beat. We are trying, and a little bit more is happening. I think we're a long way from doing what we had years and years ago of the traditional village bobby walking about, because crime's changed. You know, years ago, nobody had a mobile phone. Now a mobile phone features in most crimes, and if you download an iPhone, that we do for investigations, there's 30 to 60,000 pages of A4 we have to review. So that means the officer's back in the station. It's just one example. So I think walking the beat and talking to people and engaging with people is A1 policing. We just can't resource it, is the real answer. But we are trying to go back to that a little bit more. I think we're a long way from it though. But that's why the government's brought in this scheme that you can contact your local police officer and get a reply within 72 hours. I will say the caveat of that your local police officer might cover a big local area, but in theory you should be able to do it.
And obviously we're keen to go along and we do things such as Coffee with a Cop, where we have them where people can drop in, but we're very keen to go along to local groups and different things. So whilst we do this on a big scale, you would see all your smaller groups, from all ages and all community things. If you get in touch with your local neighbourhood teams, they'll have officers or PCSOs who can go along and engage with them.
Fantastic. Great. So hopefully that's answered your question. I think this is for you, Colin. If I'm driving and I'm speeding and you pull in behind me, can I play the deaf card? Will you let me go free? Or will you give me a fine?
I'm being recorded, so I'll be careful. Don't speed. That's my advice. But don't speed. But I mean, no, you can't play the deaf card. But yeah.
But I know that many years ago, this actually did happen, and I've heard stories in the past of deaf people who are going, "Oh, I'm deaf," to the police way back when. They often get away with things, but obviously now, hopefully not so much in this modern world. I'm sorry to say, audience, I'm sorry, it doesn't happen these days.
Well, police officers still have discretion, I'll say that. We are, yeah, but don't speed, please don't speed. On that note, there's one good thing to go along with the deaf cards. I think you said there's now on seatbelts you can get padding for where the seatbelt hits your shoulder, and we've seen something now is that they effectively have "I am deaf" on the seatbelt, which is quite a good idea. I thought if you're in an RTC, the officer can see that potentially if you're unable to communicate because of the RTC, for example, and it's just another thing to consider.
You can get them yourselves with our we've across BCH and definitely in Cambs, we're looking at purchasing some of them. This is still a little way off, so we won't have a lot of update, but we'll have a little bit more by the road show that you would be able to apply for one of them as well. But essentially it goes back to our thing, anything, whilst the onus is on us to work out how to communicate with you, anything that can give us pointers to the fact that you're deaf and many BSL will help in those emergency situations. The ones that we're looking to get will have a bit inside where you can put your I am deaf card or Pegasus card as well and write on your PIN number and things.
That's really interesting. And actually the next question is about that. Is that if you're in a car crash or you're unconscious or you're having some other issues, how do you identify? Is that new, that seatbelt thing? Sorry.
I think yes. We can't take credit for it. I believe Devon and Cornwall or another force did it first, but we saw it and we like to borrow with pride in the places. So they're fairly new, but it's something that obviously we'd hope more and more forces will start to take on board. But going back to your original question about if you're unconscious.
If you're unconscious, in a way, it makes it very easy because we just treat you medically. It's probably, I mean, if you're in that level of accident, it's quite easy because we're just going to get you out and get you to the paramedics. But I mean, in situations like that where you could be injured or communication could be even more difficult, I think cops have just got to do the best they can and serve you. But in some ways, it almost makes it easy because we're used to people that are in accidents that can't communicate with us because they're in shock. They're injured inside, internally, etc. So that's not so much a problem. The more of the problem is probably minor incidents where communication is more difficult, and that's where I'm a quite simple person. We've made these lovely new cards that say I'm deaf, but to me, I would just carry a little card yourself that says I'm deaf. It serves the same purpose. Most police officers, if you give them that, they will say, right, okay, let's work the problem to them. They will probably immediately start getting their phone out to communicate via written text, which I now know because of our engagement even, and it isn't always the best, but it just gets that some form of communication flowing and they work the problem.
And also going back to where we talked about earlier about the emergency, where you can put your details on your phone and things, a lot of that emergency information is also accessible from your lock screen to emergency service personnel, be that the police, fire or ambulance. So again, filling in that information through your phone provider, now we all carry our phones everywhere, can be a big source of information in that emergency.
Brilliant, thanks. So I'm going to ask a few more questions and then we'll get wrapped up, okay? So I'm so sorry if you do have lots more questions, just bear with it. So one person, Zara, I think they're out of the area, West Yorkshire. So they've asked, through 101, is that available to contact through BSL in this area and in the other areas?
It should be. So signed video should be available, as far as I'm aware, in all force areas. It's definitely available in Cambridgeshire, but signed video should get you through to a 101 system somewhere, and they'll either relay it back to West Yorkshire or will directly get you to West Yorkshire. I would expect, because that's built into our system, that it would be national, because things such as 999 and 101 are national systems, and then you get put through to your local area based on postcode where you're phoning from, different things like that. I would expect you to be able to get through to that, but definitely if you download the signed video app, it'll show you all your 101 options and things. But if you're in a real emergency, if you get through to the police, we can always get it there if needed, but I would expect West Yorkshire to have that function.
Thank you. So for Cambridgeshire Constabulary, are any of the police officers armed, or how many of the armed police do you have?
Exact number I don't know, but it's tiny. It's very few. I think some days we can put out less than sort of 6 officers that are armed. We won't send them to routine jobs. We don't need to. Cambridgeshire's really safe, so it's a very, very small percentage of armed officers in Cambridgeshire. It's actually quite a small percentage of armed officers in most forces. It's only really the big forces such as the Met, West Mids, Manchester that carry a lot more armed police. We don't really have gun crime in Cambridgeshire, so we don't need armed ones. The numbers are really small.
Fab, thank you very much. So last question, and it's actually positive feedback, so I thought I'd end on a positive note. So Jill wanted to say she used the 111 service today and it works really, really well. Oh, sorry, the relay service, and it works really, really well.
Oh, good.
It's good to know.
Brilliant. So you've all been watching. I think we've been live for an hour now, so it's been really, really interesting discussions. We've had lots of different updates and we've got a plan for things going forward, and CDA are really, really looking forward to continuing this relationship with Cambridgeshire Constabulary. And also remember, Wednesday the 25th of March, it's at 6 o'clock. Please arrive at 5:30. with plenty of time, because we're going to go into a lot of depth that evening. We've got updates and information that you can take on board and see all the developments. And also, you'll be watching video footage that the police will bring with them. And you can use that to feedback on how improvements can be made for you all in the deaf community. So it's going to be really, really important. So before I finish, I just want to ask if you've got any final questions or comments.
I would just say please continue to engage with us, be that through any of our services. Get in touch with us if you have individual questions. Come along to the roadshow, utilise CDA or other deaf and hard of hearing groups across the county. We want to hear from you. The only way we can improve is if we know there's a problem, and yeah, anything we'll sort of take on board where we can, work with it. And also where we do fall short, do hold us to account. That's your right, as it is to anybody else, to hold us, and we can try and improve. But we will try our best, as we want this to work for everybody involved.
Yeah, it's just to echo those initial comments. We thought we would have no problems with the deaf community. We thought everything was good. We were good. They were good. They had a good opinion of us, and we were really surprised and disappointed. But we know that now, so it's on us to put it right. So let's keep it going.
Completely agree. So thank you so much for both of your time this evening. Thank you all for watching, and we'll see you there on Wednesday the 25th of March, and that's at Cambridge Constabulary headquarters. Thank you very much, everyone.